Hello and welcome to this week's tutorial, which is how to make a peacock cake. As usual, everything you need is going to be below, but you can pause that moment just to see the breakdown of the paste. A top tip here, if you haven't got a special weigh-in scales, roll your paste out to 1 centimetre and then you can count the number of what little 1 centimetre squares on there just to see how big the paste is and how much you need. I'm using just regular sugar paste or fondant icing, and I'm going to add some CMC, which you might call Tylos, and this is going to make our paste into a modelling paste. You could also use saracino as well, or you could use flour paste or gum paste mixed with sugar paste. But I tend to use 1 teaspoon of CMC mixed with 400 grams of sugar paste. And as you're kneading it, it might feel as if it's all falling apart, but keep going. That's my little weigh-in scales there, so it's a lot easier if you can weigh out your paste, but your paste might not be able to be so good with small measurements. I'm also showing you the petal cutters. Ignore the scribbling out. I think it was a change of mind. So you can see I'd written on my paper there, but obviously I changed it afterwards. Now that is actually a lime green, but when the recording was played back, the sort of viney lime green doesn't show up as lime green, so you're just going to have to pretend with me on that one. All of these sugar pastes have got some CMC added, or you can just use them as they are, but they would take a good 5 to 7 days to firm up. So I do think the CMC is a better bet. Or, as I mentioned, you can use the saracino pasta model. You could also use modelling chocolate as well. So the first thing you need to do is to roll out your paste only to about 1 to 2 millimeters thick. They don't have to be thick because we're going to be layering all of these petals. So every time you layer them, it's going to get thicker. So try and go really thin with this one. You can also see this is a really old petal cutter. So it's got a split in it, so I do apologise. But what it means is when I peel it away, it's going to sometimes stick a little bit. There you go. See, just to peel it away. And then when you've peeled away that spare paste, you're going to need to literally scrunch up that paste really well, get it nice and stretchy, and pop it back in a sandwich bag. Now I've got a nice rose petal veiner there. This is the one by Bloom's Top Cake Studio. And as you can see, the point is down the bottom. So ease it away from the side. And you're going to go ahead and vein all of those. And the number of petals you use are totally up to you. But the nice way to do it is to start with the larger size and work your way down smaller. Because that way, there we go. So we're going to do 9 of the 4 centimeters. We also did 9 of the 5 centimeters as well. But it just means that petals can decrease in size as they get closer to the actual body of the bird. Just explaining. I've got multiple cutter sets on there, and this was a recording of a live class, so my lovely ladies were online while we were in lockdown. So, and every now and again you'll see me disappear off screen because I'm just too busy chatting and saying hello to them. We just have a lovely time. So there we are, you can see the different sizes. I've only used 3 sizes, but I actually decided to use a 3 centimeter, even though I've used those 4. We would also go in because one of the ladies had a peacock petal cutter set. So we would also compare in sizes for what she was going to use as well. But you literally just vein everything. You can also see I'm leaving everything out. Those petals actually don't need to be covered at the moment. You can leave them where they are, which is so easy. We just get right the way through to the end of that vine green. Yes, I know it looks yellow. I cannot figure out how to change the screen. Now the gold paste, there are lots of colours you can use for gold. I know I listed some, but have a little look what you've got. You can even use, there's a really lovely product out there which is actually metallic gold modelling paste. So if you're buying that, you don't need to use CMC in there. There we go. I just figured you'd want this bit sped up a bit. You've watched me cut out and vein a load of petals. So as you move down a colour, you're going to start with a slightly smaller cutter to start off with. So I've just done the 4 and the 3 centimeters in this one. I'm going to vein them, but you've actually got 2 choices. You can not bother veining this gold coloured one. You can fix it straight into place onto the yellow, so you can use a little bit of edible glue. If you're using saracino, you wouldn't need the glue. And then you can vein them together, or you can vein them separately and stick them together if they're nice and thin. But if you think, oh no, I did my petals a bit too thick, don't worry, just vein the 2 together. And that'll make it so much easier, and they'll blend together as well. Now this is a very stylized way of doing it. Another thing you could do is drag the curved side of the petals with a Dresden tool, just to make it look a little bit serrated, and that will just give you some nice texture as well. So my edible glue there, so you can make it yourself. You use 1 part CMC to 37 parts of water, so you can weigh it out if you want to the quantity you need. Or to be perfectly honest, if you're reusing your little glue pot, just dip the tip of your knife in, drop in the CMC, fill it up with cool boiled water or hot water and leave it overnight. Give it a good old shake. There, see, so you can pop them back in if you want to. Now these petals will also look really nice if they've got a nice curve to them, so we'll curve them up later on. But for now you just need to go ahead and fix the yellow, the vine green and the gold together, and you can see I'm leaving a rim of the vine green around the top. We're obviously going to be adding loads of lovely dusting colours to this as well, which is going to make it look really pretty. But you could pick your own colours, couldn't you? The reason we're doing the gold is because if you're going to paint or dust gold over the top, it just makes it an awful lot easier than trying to start with white paste and painting it gold. So it just gives us little bits of shadow, because the gold I'm going to be painting with is lighter than the gold that you can see there. God, I wish I could work this fast. I know I say that a lot, but you're probably the same as me. You'll watch back something and think, oh crumbs, that took ages. In truth, this took a couple of lessons. So we actually had 4 hours to make this peacock, and I've shrunk this class down to about 45 minutes or so. So what you can actually be doing is using this as a real lesson and playing and pausing, because I'm keeping the lesson a little bit longer for this one. There we go, nearly to the end, and then we can actually get to change colour. So we've used vine green and we've used gold. Sky blue is a really, really pretty colour. There's also a peacock blue. There's all sorts of nice blues. So have a little look of what you've got in your toolkit and just look for a very true blue that's quite nice and pale. Now, can you see I've only actually started with the smallest one? So this is the 2 centimetre cutter here, and we've got the other one left as well. So you can use those 2 smaller ones. There, see? So what was it? 2 centimetre and a 1 3/4 centimetre. I've slowed this down a little bit, and I apologise for the blurring, it's because I've zoomed in really far. So what I've done is turn my cutter upside down with the point at the top, and I'm using it to create little oval shapes out of these petals that we've already cut. So I'm using a larger cutter, it could be the 3 or the 4 centimetre, just to make a lovely gentle curve around the bottom. So you don't have to have any special oval cutter. So I'm going to go ahead and do those to all of the sky blue ones, which is such a pretty colour, isn't it? It's going to stand out such a lot. I think they look like little balloons. There, that looks so much better, doesn't it? And there's lots of different shapes on the peacock feathers, but we simplified it down a little bit, stylized it. There we go. So that was the 2 centimetre and the 1 3/4 centimetre. So you know what we've got to do now. We've got to fix it into place, and then you can vein it afterwards, or don't forget you can vein it before. So there we are. You can see I'm veining off to the sides and then fixing it in place. So yeah, sugar glue, you don't have to actually buy it if you don't want to, but as you can see, everybody has their own favorite brands. So I actually like all of them because they all have different uses. The Fractal Colors pot, if you're a beginner, I recommend buying pots of glue first, just so you can see what the consistency is like. So the Fractal Colors and the Squires Kitchen are slightly thicker and the Rainbow Dust is slightly thinner. So I use those for different purposes. If you want to be able to adjust your piece a lot, then the thinner glue is a lot easier to use. Did you know the thicker glues are great for using wafer paper? And if you're really uncertain, as I mentioned, you can make your own. So when you make your own, if you're going to do it for wafer paper, for example, add a bit more CMC, make it much thicker. And I know this is not a wafer paper lesson, but I do love working with wafer paper. The other way is to just shred up some wafer paper. I do about a sheet of A4 and about a tablespoon of hot water. There we go. Now this one, we're only using the smallest one. So the 1 3/4 size, but can you see we're turning it around? And I'm going to use that gorgeous blue colour that we used and coloured earlier. So as I mentioned, all of the colours are listed. So this was the lovely Aztec blue by Fractal Colors. You could use a nice royal blue. There's lots of lovely colours out there. And don't forget, you could do your own. You could also do the whole thing in white and then you can change the colour yourself. Now, can you see I'm using the point of the cutter to remove a section out of the bottom? There, see? So rounded at the top, point taken out of the bottom. Yeah, this is a good trick. Why do you want to do one at a time? Doesn't work with wafer paper, by the way, because it's just not strong enough. Now, neaten them up a little bit more because the one in the center really annoys me because he's sideways. So I would still try and give them a little bit of the right direction for the vein. So the vein is sort of going from top to bottom with a little bit of towards the point. But it does mean you don't have to vein them one at a time and risk everything drying out too much. And if you're concerned that your paste is drying out, you're absolutely welcome to pop it in a sandwich bag while you work. Just keep them nice and flat. But we need to fix these together. So the same as before, very sparing amounts of sugar glue. And I only use sparing amounts because then I can move the piece around. So can you see I'm leaving the little gap at the bottom, and you also saw I was able to slide it. That's because I've literally only really put a dot of the glue. You can see the colour come into life now. We haven't even dusted it yet. So yeah, sparing amounts, and then you can slide it down into position and leaving a tiny little bit of the sky blue visible in the gap below. There we are. So if you're using the smallest of the petals, you could decide to use a smaller cutter if you wanted to. There we are. Just veining the second lot for the tiny ones. But you'll watch the difference now. Oh, I'm obviously trying to speed up. Can you see all I did was use a smaller cutter again, but you can use the same size cutter and just cut more away from it. So if you're having problems with your cutter size, what you can do, turn the petal cutter point ways up, then use the curve of a cutter to cut away the point, then cut the V away, and it'll give you a smaller shape. Sorry, bash my finger on the table. Doesn't it look like there's lots of eyes staring at you? Okay, so there's the cutter sizes again, and there's the colours. But as I mentioned, you could start in white and you could just paint it all. And that's the colours I'm using in detail, so I'm pointing at which bit. There we go. Now, that's upside down the whole shape. We also decided when we were chatting during the class not to have two of the V's cut out. We liked it better with just one V cut out. But you can go ahead and do it in two if you want to. So there are the colours. So pause here, see what you're going to use. But to be honest, I would just look for something similar in your own toolbox. Now, vine green is by Squires Kitchen, so you could use a lime green, you can use a spring green, you can add more yellow to it if it looks too dark. You can use gooseberry or you can use moss green. It's just a very pretty sort of colour. So the gooseberry is by Sugarflair, the moss green by Fractal Colors. This is Peacock blue by Rainbow Dust. And to be honest, we literally just looked in my drawer and looked for suitable colours. And then we've got a little bit of the Viola. I'm dreadful with pots of colours. I always cross-thread them. What you can see in the background is me fighting with so I've obviously cross-threaded it when I've put it away. I've also got really tiny little spoons as well in the drawer so that people can use just a tiny spoon to help themselves to some colour. You know that moment when you just tip the colour and the whole pot falls out. So Antique Gold by Sugarflair, really lovely colour. But did you know if you've got a gold and it's too light for purpose, just add a few spots of black dust colour and it'll bring it down. Or you can, if you add a few spots of green as well, just changes the colour. I sometimes add a few bits of silver to my, like a radiant gold, and it just makes it look like a darker colour. So this is using a filbert brush, which has got a nicely rounded edge, but it's a flat brush. So a size 6 or a size 8 is quite a nice size to use. And I'm dusting the very edge of that vine green. I want to keep some of the lighter vine green that's in there. And don't worry about neatness on this. A little bit at the bottom as well. So anywhere that's vine green, I'm going to be dusting it. But you need a bit of depth. So now I'm going in with that gooseberry or moss green. You can use moss green as well. These Sugarflair's gooseberry and the moss green by Fractal Colors are very similar, only ever so slightly one darker than the other. The moss green's ever so slightly darker. But can you see how much nicer that looks? But we're also going to be putting, I've got a mixture of the vine green and the gooseberry green just on that side edge of the gold. So what it means is when we paint over it later on with the actual antique gold, those smudgy little bits are just going to look like shadowing. And don't forget, when you're looking at something through a camera, it looks totally different to in real life. So that's why we've got a picture of the peacock at the start, just so you can get an idea of what it looks like. Oh, now to the peacock blue, and I've got a different brush as well. So I always keep a brush for blue, a brush for greens, one for oranges. You could use reds with it as well, one for yellow, and one for like purples. And this way I can pick up a different brush and it's not going to corrupt my colours a bit too much, you know. However, if you've only got one brush, you can start off with the lighter colours and gradually blend it in, and that's okay. So just dust in a little bit of that Viola. You can use a little bit of grape violet, or you can use deep purple, depends how dark you want it really. Look at that. Can you see the eye really starting to come to life? And get a little bit onto the sky blue as well. Because what happens is if you spray glaze these, they'll all blend together and it'll just give it a bit more interest. Now in this tutorial, I'm diluting it with a dipping solution. You can use whatever you use, like a paint aid. Some people use vodka. Water is a little bit too runny. So you could even have a look for ready mixed golds that don't require any alcohol if you don't use alcohol at all. You can also mix it with a little bit of vegetable fat, so you can smear some fat over where you would like to put the gold, and you can just dry dust the gold on. I also use coconut oil as well, because the coconut oil smells absolutely amazing when you use it. And I've done it where I brush coconut oil all over the surface of a cake, and then you dry dust your gold powder onto it, and then you take a lovely big blusher brush and polish it all. So that would be the non-alcoholic way of adding the gold. But can you see the little shimmer? And I'm going back over the green section just so you can see the green is now slightly blended in, but I haven't got rid of all of our original gold colour because you, as I said, you want a couple of shades coming through. It just looks a little bit more interesting. But I do apologise that it's ever so slightly pale to me. So you need to add a little bit of the blue. Now you can choose to use the peacock blue that I've got. You can also use, like, say, the Azure blue or any sort of darker blue like a royal blue, but I really liked the peacock blue onto here. A sky blue would look quite nice as well, but it just gives it a little bit of extra. You can also go ahead and dust the backs of those, but look at this now just to see the difference from not dusted and to coloured. It just brings it a little bit more to life. It's very stylized, but it's still quite interesting. Now, I have got a 2-tier cake that I've already iced. So if you head over, and you can obviously click like and subscribe, but I've got other tutorials. I've got how to make buttercream, how to split and fill, how to ganache, how to make the ganache, how to sugar paste with sharp edges. So head on over to those. But I'm using a 4-inch and a 6-inch round cake in this instance. You can choose the height, whether it's a 4-inch or 5-inch or a 6-inch, just to suit what you would like to do. I've covered it with sugar paste and I've let that set overnight. Now, what I've also done as well, we had a week's gap in between doing this. So I've got 120 grams, but I've coloured up some white saracino in exactly the same way as I did for the blue for the sugar paste. Because what we discovered was the paste was just a bit too dry from previously. Where we were also in lockdown, I was trying to use up, we had a lot of paste that didn't get used because all the classes were postponed or cancelled. So all the travelling didn't happen. So I was trying to use up some paste that had gone out of date just to teach for the class, because it's only me using it and it just wasn't happy enough to use. So you can see this rough shape that I've made, and all you're thinking to yourself is a neck and a very flattened body. The reason I'm putting a kebab skewer in there is because, quite frankly, the neck is going to sort of slide down and flatten. So the kebab skewer will hold it into shape for you. Get some cornflour puff on your hands if you find your hands are sticky. But what I'm doing is really affixing that paste at the top, even coming up a little bit onto the kebab skewer to stop it sliding down. Cool, that was good timing, wasn't it? But it does slide down with the best will in the world. But the reason I'm using the kebab skewer is because the texture in the wood helps it stay upright. Now, the other thing you can do is, when it's completely dry, is take out the kebab skewer, which is what I tend to do for children's cakes, because I don't really want kebab skewers in a children's cake, just in case they ate it. So I tended to make the figures and remove the skewer. Just making sure. So you can see on the size of my board as well, when I move my hand out of the way. You can see the sizes because every little square is a centimetre. Now, what we're doing, we are shaping the peacock's beak, but we're not going to use that beak. It's just getting the face roughly to what we would like it to be. And then I'm going to show you my technique, which is what I also teach for something as simple as a snowman. So one of the first things you make on a Christmas class is a snowman. And the way to work out how much for the hat and how much for the head and so on in the different colours is the same method as we're going to be using with the beak. So the beauty with saracino is you can blend it in. So what you can see me doing now is blending away all of my creases and cracks, because if you want to add texture, you need to add the texture that you want, not have splits in the paste. You can also use a scissors to snip that beak to the size that you would like as well. And this works for any bird that you're going to make. I'm also keeping the paste going. I'm sort of supporting it, and it's actually setting. I can feel it firming up in my hands. Can you see that curve under the chin? Roll the finger around, and that really helps that shape come in. And it's also standing on its own now. Can you see it's not falling over anymore? Now you could choose to put individual feather marks all over the peacock, but if this is just a simple birthday cake and you haven't really got the time and the budget to do that, you could add some texture. So we're going to do some experimentation here. You can use some firm, strong cling film scrunched up if you want a gentle texture. You could use a sandwich bag scrumpled up, and all you're doing is using it to form the shape as well as to press in. Now, I find that the cling film works best when I'm using sugar paste with CMC because saracino actually sets so beautifully that sometimes the cling film is a bit too soft. Can you see it's actually harder to move the bird now? So that's really worth looking at, isn't it? So just in that short amount of time that you've seen me doing it, I've only taken off a couple of minutes really. But yeah, it's not moving that much now, is it? It's a lot sturdier. So you need to work out what you're going to use for the head feathers, and we decided in this we were going to use some stamen, and these are called seed head stamen. So I shall show you a nice close-up, and they're going to go in that hole. So we're going to remove that bit and we're going to be putting the seed head stamen inside. So there's lots of different sizes, so you can pick and choose the size that you'd like to do. You need about half a dozen. But if you want to have stronger texture, you can use greaseproof paper or you can use foil. Now I thought foil would be really too strong, but the greaseproof paper, watch the difference in texture. I'm not going to press too much on the head because I don't want it to really be destroyed because all that lovely shaping will be gone. But you'll see now how much more texture, and it only depends on whether your paste is drying. If your paste is very soft, then the cling film is more than sufficient. But where this paste is setting beautifully, we decided to go for the greaseproof paper. All it is, we're going to be painting this bird. So all of that lovely paint is going to slide into the texture that we did. So that's just going to look so much nicer than just a flat bird. Can see that texture now, can't you, with the shadows? There we are. Right, so we're going to move on to the face now. And you can pull up the colours that you've previously. So if you've got any of that gold left over, which there we are, all I've done is I double cling filmed it. I also put it in a sandwich bag and I put it in a Tupperware container. But the blue, there was too much CMC added, and because blue is a very dry-in colour, it dried our blue out. So this is why I'm using saracino. You're watching me adding some texture to the bird. So you could choose to do it with your knife. You could choose to use a palette knife to do it. Can you see? So you want the line across the beak and you want a little hollow in. But we're going to be removing that beak, because I want a paler beak on there. I want a nice gold beak. So if you were trying to paint over the blue, I think it would be rather tricky to get that colour. But what you're going to do, you're going to use that beak shape that you've already cut. And we're going to be literally just replacing it with the gold. That's another way of doing the little nostril holes, and you can also drag a shape along the side. That's nice and close to show you because I know it's going to be trickier to show you with the gold. But yeah, it's a really good way of doing a beak. And you can let it set up a little bit before you fix it back onto the bird's body. Now with saracino, if your paste is wet, you don't actually need any glue. But if your paste is dried, a little bit of edible glue helps. So can you see I've got exactly the same size in gold? Doesn't that look, I don't know, it looked really, really lovely. That's why we went for the gold. And I'm just going to put those same marks again, but this time I'm going to use a really tiny mini palette knife. And that way then I just feel it'll push the line into the beak, into the gap a lot better. So make sure that beak is secured nicely. No glue went on there, it wasn't needed. So there you go, you can see a palette knife. I've got some nice ones. I've got one by Squires Kitchen, I've got one by Cherart, and I've also got the PME one as well. So whatever is in your toolbox, but you can see it's a very fine palette knife. and I'm just adding some texture in. So there's about 4/5 of the beak at the top and just the final 1/5 down the bottom. I'm also using a cookie scribe. So push in and lift it up when you're pushing in. So push into the hole and then lift it away, and it'll just give you a nice hollowed out, I think they're nostrils. Now this is the PME small ball, and we're going to use this for the eye. Now you've got to decide on the position of the eye. Can you see that dot in the beak? You're going to follow it along. There, can you see I'm sort of explaining? You're following the shape of the beak, and halfway along on the head, that's where you're going to put the eye. So there's method to the madness. And what I'm doing is I'm putting my other finger on the other side of the head. So where I'm pressing in with the ball, I get an idea where that is on the other side of the bird's head. You can use that measurement again, but can you see now I'm putting my thumb over and I'm pretending to stab my thumb through the head, and I know that the eyes will be in the right place. Emphasizing that lovely chin and cheek. Now I tend to go back in and just ever so slightly open it up as well, because the larger the eyes, the more attractive they are, so you can stylize your bird a little bit as well. And you notice I'm leaving in that kebab skewer. Now you can cut your kebab skewer down shorter, and don't forget to put some safety aspect on it, like a blob of sugar paste on the end, so you don't catch yourself in the face. Now you can see me putting in one of the little gold balls of paste, but you could use like a 4 or 5 millimeter dragée or dragée, depending how you say it. But I wanted to be able to paint them, so I just used the paste that we've used, and this way I can add some colour on as well. So what you do to one side, you do to the other. And if you find it easier, you can roll the little balls of paste and let them go firm while you're right at the start, and then when you push them in, they won't go flat. Now we need to put some indentations, so we're using the wide Dresden side, and this is the PME Dresden tool. And I'm like stroking these markings into place. Can you see, using the side edge of that wide side of the Dresden? And we're going to be putting paste in those recesses, so do the same on the other side. Add in a little bit of edible glue, because by now that body is setting nicely. And I have got some little flattened sausages of that lovely gold coloured paste again. Did you see that paste start to come back out of there? That was literally because the blue paste is drier. So that's why you need the edible glue, so it needs a bond. But as I mentioned, if both of your pieces of saracino that you want to stick together are still soft and pliable, you won't need the glue. It's like it's got its own glue. It's very clever. So use that Dresden tool to blend that piece in and to give a little bit of texture as well. Just think it makes it look quite nice, doesn't it? And we're going to add some colour into the eye. So as you can see, we're going to use orange and vivid red, and that's by Fractal Colors. And I've just got a really small size 0 or 00 paintbrush. You can use the gel straight out of the tube, as I've done there, or you can mix it in with a little bit of dip-in solution that we used earlier. Depends how quickly you need them to dry. There we go. So this is the red is going round the outside. So the middle of the eye is very orange and the outside of the eye is red. Funny how the camera focuses on your hand, isn't it? And I've got I would say it's a 3 millimeter ball tool inside. You could even use a 2. And I'm gently hollowing, because it's a lot easier to paint inside a hollow than it is to randomly paint a circle onto an eye. Now, if you've got those super tiny dragées, which are about 2 millimeters, you could pop one of those inside there. Apologies that my hand is in the way. So I'm just painting some black into the center. And I've just put a very small amount of black. So you're going to go ahead and do that for the other side as well. Once you've done the black, put that same tool back in again. And can you see it? It's smeared the black around, but it just means you can go back in and neaten it. It's a lot easier if you've got a definite circle hollow shape. There we are. much better. You can also put black paste as a ball inside the eye. That's a good way of doing it. But I'm also going to paint inside that nostril hole. And then we're going to add a little hollow section. There we are. Because I'm dragging away with the wide Dresden end of my PME Dresden. And I'm just putting a little bit of depth into there as well, still with the black. I don't know what this part was called, but it was on the bird that I saw. And then about half the size of an eye. And you can see I've got a ball, I cut it in half and then I cut it in half again. So you can compare the size against my Dresden tool. And this is going to be fixed into place above the eye. So think of it as an eyebrow. And you will need to sort of gently push that into place without squashing it too much, just to make sure that it's not going to fall off. And I use my Dresden tool, the wide end, facing down to push up against the eyebrow, just to make sure it has got a nice hollow. I'll go in closer for you to see. There we go. You can see the texture I've put with the black as well, and you can see the eyebrow over the eye. It just makes it look so much better. Now I'm cutting off that kebab skewer, but what I need to do first, I'm going to pull a bit of that kebab skewer up, cut it off, and now I'm pushing it back down so it's inside the head, because I've decided, because we're making this cake in class and nobody's going to be eating it, I'm going to leave the skewer inside. So normally I would remove it. And then I've got those stamen again, and we decided to add more stamen. So what it basically is, when you buy a stamen, they're usually double-sided. So I had 6, I cut it in half, which now means I've got about 12. By pushing the kebab skewer down, it means I've got enough space in the top of the head that I can put those stamen inside. But don't forget to put a little bit of edible glue inside. You saw there was barely anyone in there. Oops, sorry bird, squashed you. And the feathers, they're going to sort of be like a mohawk. So they're going to come down to the beak a little bit and then down to the back of the head. So you can either use your fingers or you can use tweezers, whatever you're most comfortable with, really. I didn't like that one. Sometimes one just doesn't fit properly. Now we're going to paint this bird now. So I was initially going to paint these stamens with black, and then I realized that when you're painting stamens, the paper covering really catches the color. So I'm doing the same color as I'm doing the bird. So I have got Royal Blue by Sugarflair, and it's mixed with a dipping solution. And can you see I'm stabbing the color on? I'm not going to go neatly, because that way then the color will flow into the little texture areas that we did. Can you see how runny it is? So it falls into the texture and it blurs. So be careful around the beak and be careful around that golden patch. But you could always sort of gently wipe it away with a little bit of water if you make a mistake. So go ahead and paint that whole bird. Can you see it's falling into the sort of cracks and creases we made by the texturing that we did there? And don't worry about if it looks a little bit runny or if it looks like it's run. It'll all add to the feather effect. You can also add a little pinch of navy blue into your royal blue colouring, and that navy blue will just darken it down in patches. So think sympathetically, like under the chin, the bottom of the bird. There you go. But a bit of navy blue just drops that colour around. Now, we're not concentrating on cake for this tutorial, but we were just having a play with ribbons. So during the lesson, I showed them how to make a ribbon bow, as you can see on the side, which is a great way to hide the ends of your ribbons, by the way. And now I've got some wired edged ribbon. Can you see when you push it down, the wire stays in position? One thing I used to do when people used to say, oh, I don't want anything on the side, just a bit of ribbon. For like pretty little girls' cakes or christening cakes, I used to coil some wired chiffon ribbon. And what I found was it just gave you a really nice floaty sort of something or other around the bottom of the cake. So There, see, and I just always thought it looks nice and floaty and it's a bit interesting. So we were just talking at this point about different ribbons that you could use. So I've gone for the simple option in this, and that's tying it in a knot and really tucking the ends in, and it just looks like there are no ends where if you can tuck them in well enough, and it looks quite interesting then. So you could even have that at the front if you, because of the wired ribbon, you can easily curl the end to tuck it underneath. You could have it in a big, lovely, voluminous bow as well if you want to. But we already had a bow on the cake, so I wasn't really keen on adding another one. And of course, if you're going to do this, then there is nothing sticking into the cake. That ribbon can just be taken back off. There, see? And then you obviously need a ribbon around the top edge. Oh, and by the way, this top tier isn't actually stuck on at the moment, but I just popped a little bit of coloured ribbon around there. Did you know if you wet the ribbon under the tap, wring the ribbon out and then wrap it around the cake, it'll just stick into place and the ribbon will dry. Look at the colour. We've literally only just painted this. Sorry about the extension lead. That's the perils of filming. Now, can you see our different sizes? So we used a 5 centimetre, a 4 centimetre and a 3 centimetre to cut out the outer shapes. And then we also used the 2 centimetre and the 1 3/4 centimetre for the inside shapes as well. So we want to start with the smallest petals. You can call them feathers, but they are clearly petals on this case, at the top of the bird. And as you can see, I've got the bird disappearing into the cake a little bit, just so that it would be easy to have something to attach it to. And this peacock is not really a removable, savable thing, because we wanted the feathers going down the side. Oh, you can see the texture there. Now, first of all, you want to test out your first ones. So I found to get them to blend into the body, it looked much better if we actually inserted those petals. So we're going to be gluing them as well, so you can take them back out and glue them. We're also playing with the texture to see how it looks, but I'm going to show you a little bit more of what we're going to do. And you can also decide how many you want to go. So I decided, I think 4 around the top, but I need to take them out and put a little bit of gunge inside. So gunge is sugar paste mixed with water or edible glue until it resembles wet chewing gum. Yeah, look at that. Add a little bit of texture with your Dresden, and I found that looked like it belonged there then. But that gunge is basically sugar paste, so it's not going to affect the flavour of your cake as well. If you want it to dry slower, use sugar paste and water. If you want it to dry faster, use sugar paste and edible glue or alcohol. Don't use the dipping solution, by the way. Use vodka or a clear spirit. So I'm basically, as I mentioned, starting small and working my way down. So we've got 9 of the 5 centimetres, 9 of the 4 and 15 of the 3. So we've got plenty of petals, but you can do as many as you like, because you might want to do a 1 tier cake and only go down to the bottom of that tier. Totally up to you. And this isn't the first peacock cake you've ever seen. There's lots of peacock cakes out there. So we had to sort of try using pictures of real peacocks with the head and to try and make it look a little bit original. We figured the stamens were a nice, easy thing to do, but you could use wafer paper, couldn't you, to put the head feathers into place. But you can see we wanted the feathers flowing down the cake. Now, I've left in where you see me putting in a feather and then taking it back out, changing position, how I'm cleaning it up, how I'm pressing it into place with my Dresden. There, see? Because you are allowed to change your mind, but you must neaten your work as you go. So I'm trying to tuck in the next size underneath, and it's not easy when you get to the edge. So we made the decision to move the top tier over. Can't you see that makes so much more of a difference? Now, in real life, your cake would be stuck. So what I would recommend is having your cakes offset. So the 2 cakes are closer to each other on one side, and that's the side that the feathers go down. But we were just experimenting all the way through here. There we are, it's coming down to the bottom now. Can you see I scraped off that little bit of the gunge, and I've used white gunge because it's the same colour as the cake. So you always use your gunge the same colour as the cake so you can blend it in. And I'm constantly checking these. You could use royal icing as well. But it does make a difference, doesn't it? But neatening as you go is always key. And your main thing is just feel happy with what it looks like, and you can add in little scrunched up bits of kitchen paper to let it set where you want to, but it will take overnight to set. So while we have a little look at the finished cake, it just remains to say thank you ever so much for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you'd like to keep up with any of the newest videos, but otherwise take care, stay safe and happy caking.